Welcome to Medical Herbalism. This is quite an important section of this course because I'm going to give you information on what and how to study and kind of a context for things. Now, you can certainly take this whole course and not study anything, and that's fine. I will be including some quizzes in this course, which are you can take, and you can take them as many times as you want. And there's not going to be a certificate for this course. But if you want to advance in taking our other more advanced medical herbalism classes, you will want to start to think about how you're going to want to study. So to reiterate, you can take this whole course and not study, and it's fine. You can take the quizzes or not, it doesn't matter. But if you're going to advance in your studies, I would suggest that you start to put these pieces into place. So what to study? Obviously the plants. The three most important things to memorize about a plant are its identification, like knowing that you have the right plant, its botanical name, the Latin name, that's the universal name of the plant, and the contraindications when not to use it. Those are the things I would study first. But in general, you want to study the identification, knowing that what the plant is, what it looks like, so you know you have it down pat. The anatomical terminology is the botanical names for the parts of the plant. The botanical name, which is critical, that is the universal name of the plant. So you can travel if you want to travel other places or read books on plants outside of your area, you will know which plant they're talking about. Actions, which is what the plant does. Indications, which is what the plant's for. Contraindications, dosage, how to prepare the plant, relevant constituents, chemical constituents in the plant, and notes. So we're going to go over this later on in this video, those separate things. We're not offering in this video anatomy, physiology, and pathophysiology, but that is something that you would want to begin to study. This is from a Western perspective. And then optional are the energetics. If you're going to study energetic medicine like Ayurveda or Chinese medicine or Tibetan medicine, that would be the temperature, quote-unquote temperature, which is cold, cool, neutral, warm, and hot. That's the nature. And also, if you're going to study Chinese medicine, perhaps the meridians that it enters. The common names I would make optional. You're probably going to learn them on the way anyway. Things like curcuma longa is turmeric and Morinda citrifolia is noni, and everything else. So again, you are certainly free to sit back and relax and enjoy this whole course without studying. And you can go through it more than once. And if you want to advance your knowledge and you're going to be working towards using herbs with people, then I would suggest you begin to do the memorization. So how do you study? Well, there's two ways of studying, left brain and right brain. For this class, we're going to be focusing just on left brain, which is basic memorizing, just sort of grinding your way through, if you're going to be studying the herbs, memorizing them. What I do is I use mnemonics, which is a memory aid. It's a trick that will help you to learn to memorize things. What I'll do is I'll take the botanical name of the plant, something like Taraxacum officinale, which is dandelion, and I'll attach that Taraxacum officinale name to a person, or either a familiar person I know or a famous person, or I just thought this up, T-Rex, Taraxacum mongolicum, or Taraxacum officinale, sounds like T-Rex. So I associate Taraxacum with Tyrannosaurus Rex. And it's easier if you can associate the name with the botanical name, but you don't have to. And then in my mind, I imagine that person or image has the diseases that the plant treats. So I would give T-Rex a bladder infection. So she would have a urinary tract infection. I might give T-Rex rashes. And you want to exaggerate this, make this big and weird, like a Looney Tunes cartoon. And then you might give T-Rex diabetes, and T-Rex is eating the root of the dandelion, on and on like that. So you might give T-Rex breasts and give her mastitis. So that's just a suggestion of a way to do that. And every time you think of dandelion, you think of T-Rex, and you go, "Oh yeah, that's right. There's rashes, and there's mastitis, infected breasts, and there's a bladder infection, on and on like that, and her gallbladder is needs the bile is she doesn't have enough bile in her gallbladder, so she has white stools, or however you want to do that." But once you've done that, once you've memorized and put those things together in your mind, they will tend to stick. Now, the other way of studying is what I would call right brain, and this is to actually listen to plants. And we're not going to go over this in this class. That's a whole other area of study, but that's also a valid way of learning plants. However, if I had to choose between left brain and right brain, between doing my academic due diligence and using intuition, I would absolutely go with left brain first. This is what I call due diligence. This is, I think, our responsibility as herbalists to study the non-intuitive, the linear cognitive stuff, the scientific stuff first. And then once that's our foundation, we can move into using our intuition. Okay, so here we go. This is the format that the plants will be given to you in. There will be the botanical name, which will include the plant part, and then the genus and the epithet. The genus and the epithet together constitute the species name of the plant. So the genus and the epithet are the species name. We're going to go over this more when we go over plant families, but this is the graphic that I will use. So you can see here there's Taraxacum is the genus, and Taraxacum mongolicum is one species. Taraxacum officinale is another species. So again, we'll go over this later. But so the genus and the epithet together is the species name. And then the plant family, which will end in ACEAE. And then the common names, the taste, and the nature will, as I said, be optional. Now, an action is also called a function, which is what it does, and an indication is what it's for. So these will be listed in your herb notes, and this is what you should memorize. And then preparation. How do you prepare it? Is it do you use the essential oil? Is it a tea? Do you use it topically? Contraindications, and again, this is important. When do you not use it? Dosage is usually going to be 10 to 15 grams, or a third to half an ounce, but that'll depend on the situation. And then notes, which would include constituents, like in the Taraxacum, one of the constituents would be inulin, which is a polysaccharide in the root, which is helpful to stabilize blood sugar. So again, to reiterate, you want to know the Latin name, the plant part, the Latin name, the family, actions, indications, preparation, contraindications, and dosage, and notes. Also, for the plant part, there are different parts of the plant that are used. You can use the whole plant, in which case it's called the herb, or the leaves are called folium, the flowers are called floss, etc. And you will prepare these differently depending on, in general, depending on which plant parts you're using. So you will see these abbreviations here. So you'll see herb, HB, or radix, which is root, RX, or rhizome, which is RZ, cortex. So sometimes you'll have folium Taraxacum officinale, or floss Taraxacum officinale, or Radix Taraxacum officinale. So this is the different plant parts. So this might be, the radix might be abbreviated to Rx. So this is just an example of the other structures. This is the same thing as this. So this is the way the material will be presented. It is Taraxacum officinale, and the family is Asteraceae. Remember the family names end in ACEAE. The common names are dandelion, pugongying, or wailele. And the energetics is bitter or cold, bitter and cold. Action is diuretic. It means it drains dampness. Don't worry about that. That's an energetic term. But basically you want to memorize diuretic and know what that means. And then that's the action. Indication is what it's for. It's for edema, which is fluid buildup, or urinary tract infection, which is a bladder infection. Number 2, it is a cholagogue or a cholagogue, which means it increases bile secretion. So it's used for people that aren't digesting fats. Number 3, it stabilizes blood sugar. So it would be that's the action. Indication would be type 2 diabetes or hypoglycemia, blood sugar crashes. Number 4 would be antibacterial. That's the function. What is it? That's what it does. What's it for? It's for bronchitis, which is oftentimes a bacterial infection in the lungs and the bronchi, or mastitis, which is a bacterial infection in the breasts, usually in nursing mothers, and it would be used topically. Preparation, you can boil it or used raw topically. And it's also a food. The leaves are also food. Contraindications, not in excess dryness because it tends to cause drying. Because you drain fluid with it, you want to be careful. And dosage is 10 to 30 grams, so it's a little higher dosage. And notes the French call dandelion pissenlit, which means pee in the bed, which is why it is for, you want to be careful in excess dryness. So just a note here, when we're talking about the way a patient will present, we're talking about signs and symptoms. Signs are what others can observe about the patient, and symptoms are what the patient experiences that others may not be able to see or observe. So a sign might be a rash, where you can see redness and swelling, but a symptom might be itching. You can't look at somebody and know that they're itching if they're not scratching themselves. A sign might be red eyes. A symptom might be eye pain or headache. So that's the difference between a sign and symptom. When we're dosing, generally with herbs, there's different ways of dosing things, and there's lots of different possibilities. Western herbalists typically will use 1 to 3 ounces per herb, and sometimes they use what's called a simple, which is 1 herb, or they will use 2 or 3 herbs in a formula, and usually 1 to 3 ounces each. So their formulas are going to end up being somewhere between 30 to 90 grams or 1 to 3 ounces. My Hawaiian teachers would use what they would call a poho. A poho is a handful, so 1 to 3 handfuls of any given herb. And again, they would tend to use very small formulas, if not single herbs. But they would generally use smaller formulas, and they would figure it out by taste as to how strong the formula was. My Chinese teachers and Chinese herbalists in general will tend to use much larger formulas, often 10 to 15 herbs in a formula. And each herb will be a third, 10 to 15 grams, which is a third to a half an ounce. These would end up being the same amount in the formulas, to be about 100 grams in the formula. So the formulas tend to be the same, but the Chinese formulas tend to be more complicated. I'm not particularly attached to how you decide to use your herbs. You can do it any of these ways, and I think it's fine. However, you can often make formulas by taste, which is what my Hawaiian teachers would do. This is also known as organolepsis, the ability to figure out the potential uses of a plant through the senses. So we're going to go over this in another video on how to taste things and how to extrapolate the functions of a plant by tasting it. But what my Hawaiian teachers were doing, they were using organolepsis to see how strong the formula was. So they would make a formula and then they would taste it, and if it tasted too weak, they would either add herb or boil it more. These were often infusions and decoctions, so they would either, if it was too weak, they would add herb or boil it longer, and if it was too strong, they would dilute it. Now, using the tongue is actually a remarkably accurate way of sensing how the quality of an herb and how strong you might want to make it. So how do we take plant medicines in? Well, I'm going to give you a few ways, but there are many, many, many others. There's lots of ways to take plant medicines in. One way is through food and cooking, and that's an awesome way. Really, you can think of plants as being weak drugs or herbs as being weak drugs or strong foods. So there's a continuum from botanical medicines being almost as powerful and dangerous as pharmaceutical drugs, all the way to being as mild and safe as foods. So each herb will fall somewhere on that continuum. We can also use essential oils. These are distilled, and they can be very powerful. When you're using essential oils, they are very strong, and they can burn your skin. So you always want to use them with a carrier oil. But they make awesome medicine, both internal and topical. Internal if you're careful, and topical if you're careful. But also in steams. We want to get the plant materials to the tissue that it's going to treat. And so steaming is often a great way to get plant oils to the bronchi and the lungs, and to directly, if there's an infection, to directly impact that pathology. SABS are a really, really good way of using herbs. They are a mixture of beeswax and oil, medicated oil, which is an oil with plants in them typically. Oils, certainly as food or topically or in salves, you can use oils that have been medicated. An infusion is a plant that's steeped. So when you take a tea bag or some peppermint leaves and you put them in a cup and you pour boiling water over them, that's an infusion. A decoction is when something is boiled for 20 to 45 minutes to an hour. So typically roots are decocted more often than leaves, but some leaves are decocted. And sometimes you'll do a combination where you will bring your roots to a boil, and at the very end, if you want to infuse, you'll throw some like mint leaves or ginger on top of it, turn off the heat, and put a lid on it. So that's a combination of an infusion and a decoction. You can take herbs in capsules. This is it's tricky because when you grind up an herb, you immediately expose it to oxidation and it will tend to get weak. So if capsules have been sitting on a shelf for a long time in a shop or a pharmacy, they're probably not going to be terribly strong. But you can always grind your own herbs in a coffee grinder and make your own capsules. There are also powdered extracts, which is a very specific process. We're going to go over how to make these powdered extracts in our medicine making class, but these are much stronger. These are not just powdered herbs, they're prepared a specific way. There are tinctures. Tinctures are plant material, which is called a marc, mixed with a preservative solvent, which is called a menstruum. And together they make a tincture. A tincture can be an alcohol base or a glycerin base or a vinegar base, or I suppose even a honey base, technically. And there are beers and wines. There are medicinal alcoholic beverages, which is most of our liqueurs were at one time medicinal drinks. And there are lots and lots of other ways, as I said, to make medicines, but that is a good start.